on to the second part of the lecture regarding the chapter reaching the age of adolescence from CBSE Board Standard 8. So, in the previous lecture or the first lecture of this chapter, we have known about the concepts such as adolescence and puberty. Then we have got to know about the age range of adolescence and puberty and what are the physical and emotional changes that take place during puberty. And now we will move forward to know other associated topics on this chapter. Now, to begin with, the first topic for today is secondary sexual characters. So, first, before going into the video, I will let you know why they are called secondary sexual characters. Because these characters or these features, you can say, they actually take place in both adolescent boys and girls, but these features are not directly involved in the process of reproduction. That is why they are called secondary sexual characters. Then one question might come in your mind, then what is the primary character? Primary character is the development of gonads in simple terms and the gametes, which are directly involved in the fusion, fertilization, and then giving birth to the zygote, embryo, or the fetus subsequently, one by one. So, therefore, secondary sexual characters are those characters which start to appear in the adolescent stage and which prepare our body to actually take care, or we can say support reproduction process in case it takes place. So these are the supportive characteristics, or we can say supportive reproductive features, as we can say, because they support the process of reproduction, and since they are not directly involved, so they are named in this way. So this is the basic idea. Now let's move into watching this video and then we'll discuss further.
So far, we've seen the various changes that occur in an adolescent. In this video, we will be discussing about an important concept of how secondary sexual characters develop. Wait a second. Do we know what exactly these secondary sexual characters are? Secondary sexual characters. They are characters that are exclusive to the individual sex of a person and are not primary. What does this statement mean, by the way? By the word sex, I mean the sex of the individual, male or female. By not primary, I mean the characters which are not required for the process of reproduction. That's why we call them secondary. In boys, for instance, there is a growth of beard. Have you ever seen girls having a long or trimmed beard? Of course not. However, it is an exclusive character of males which is not found in females. So this is the simplest example to understand the concept of secondary sexual characters. Let us understand the concept with another example. In case of females, one extremely important physical change during puberty is the enlargement of breasts. It is exclusively found in adolescent females. So, are there any other set of secondary sexual characters seen in males and females? Yes, of course. Apart from the growth of facial hair, the growth of hair on the chest, under the arms, and in the pubic region, are other examples of secondary sexual characters. Similarly, in females, apart from breast development, hair growth around the pubic region and under the arms is also seen. So, in a nutshell, the secondary sexual characters are those characters which are not really required as a part of reproductive system. But do you know what exactly makes these secondary sexual characters develop during puberty? These characters are all thanks to the hormones secreted by the gonads. Yes, hormones are the most important players in this process. The male gonads called testes secrete the male sex hormone called the testosterone. This is responsible for not only the development of the reproductive tissues, but also for the development of the secondary sexual characters in males. And the same is applicable to the female sex hormone called the estrogen secreted by the ovaries. It brings about the development of female reproductive tissues. At the same time, it takes up the responsibility of developing the secondary sexual characters in the female individuals. Who do you think controls the activities of these hormones in our body? The hormones regulate several processes, but who regulates the secretion of these hormones exactly? The mastermind to control all the hormonal secretions is the gland called the pituitary gland. Next, we will talk about these hormones, their major roles, and how they bring about all the necessary activities inside the body.
In the chapter Endocrine System, we have already learned about various glands, and among them was the pituitary gland, which was called the master gland. The reason being it controls the secretion of all the other endocrine glands. And the same thing has been stated over here in this video, that like any other gland, pituitary also controls the secretion of the sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen from the respective excuse me, male and female gonads. So, and they control the secretion of the hormones from gonads, which in turn control the secondary sexual characters. The development and the pace at which they will grow and the time that they will start to develop, everything is controlled by the hormones secreted from the gonads. So, secondary sexual characteristics are physical features that develop during puberty, means when the individual is reproductively active but are not directly involved in reproductions. So, example are already given over here, and apart from that, I also said over here you can refer that primary sexual characteristics means development of the gonads and the reproductive systems in male and in female. So, in male, development of the penis, scrotum, testes, and in female, the development of ovaries, uterus, and vagina are included in primary sexual characters, whereas under secondary sexual characteristics we have the growth of pubic hair, the growth of hair underarms, and the facial hair, or the development of breast. So we have some secondary sexual characters common to both male and female, just like the physical changes which were common such as in both male and female during adolescence, such as growth in height, then change in shape, change in voice. So these were the common characteristics or the common physical changes in case of both boys and girls in adolescent stage. And in case of secondary sexual characters also, the growth of pubic hair, the growth of hair in the underarms, they are also the common sexual characteristics in case of both male and females. So, and apart from that, the chest hair, facial hair, that is the development of beard and mustaches, they are exclusive in case of males, and development of breast and then fat deposition and then widening of the hip region, they are exclusive in case of females. Testes and ovaries are the reproductive organs that produce the gametes called sperms and ova respectively, and they also secrete hormones called testosterone and estrogen respectively. Now testosterone controls the development of secondary sexual characters in case of males, and estrogen secreted from a pair of ovaries control the development of secondary sexual characters in females. You can see over here the role, due to the role of hormones, they bring about a group of changes in the body both in case of female and male during the adolescent stage. So the right from the brain to the heart to the liver to the bones, skin, uterus, ovaries, breast, everything undergoes changes during this stage. And similarly in case of males also, the muscle growth, the growth of the bones, the hair growth on the skin, more collagen production, and then further development of the muscles, then the bone marrow. We know that red blood cell count is more in case of the boys than in case of girls. So we can say that bone marrow becomes very much active in case of boys during the adolescent stage, and this is also brought about by the role of hormone only. So in boys, the growth of facial hair, that is mustaches and beard, development of chest hair and the hair under the arms and in the pubic region, they mark the development of secondary sexual characters. And here in girls, you get to see development of breast, growth of hair under arms and in the pubic region, and also on the body also, suppose on the legs, on the arms. So those areas also develop hairs. Now the next subtopic is role of hormones in initiating reproductive function. So how hormones play an important role to bring about reproductive function. So about that we'll first have a look in this video and then we will continue the discussion.
Do you know who helps in the development of secondary sexual characters during puberty? Yes, it's the hormones. That is what we learned in the previous video. But do you know that hormones are not only involved in the development of secondary sexual characters, but also function to develop the reproductive organs? Yes, the primary function of the testosterone and the estrogen is to develop the reproductive organs. But have you ever wondered how do these work? Because they're produced at one side of an organ, while the location of their work is some different organ. In this video, let us have a look at how these hormones work. Firstly, do we know what these organs producing various hormones are called? They are known as the glands. Many of the glands in our body are endocrine glands, just like the testes and the ovaries. Wait a second, what are endocrine glands? Let me explain. We know that glands produce chemicals which are meant to work at distant places in the body. So the major classification of glands is carried out on the basis of the release of the chemicals secreted. So the question we have to ask is whether the glands secrete the chemicals directly into the bloodstream or require a duct or channel to do so. This fact classifies them as endocrine and exocrine glands respectively. Endocrine means directly to the bloodstream, while exocrine ones require a duct. So are we saying that the testes and the ovaries are endocrine? Do they not require ducts for secreting the hormones? No, they don't. They secrete the hormones directly into the bloodstream. Now let us get back to know how these hormones work. Who is the master of all glands in the body? We know it is the pituitary gland. So in order to make the other glands work, it has to release signals, and these signals are also in the form of chemicals. Now, once the glands, like in this case testes and ovaries, receive the signals from the pituitary, they get stimulated. And what will this result in? That's correct. It makes the testes secrete testosterone and the ovaries secrete estrogen. Now, these sex hormones are directly poured into the bloodstream. Can you tell me why? Of course, it is because these two are endocrine glands. The bloodstream carries these hormones to the target organs. And what do we mean by the target organs? Well, these are the sites where the necessary activity is performed. It's the site where the hormones carry out their effect. So, is this how the hormones work in our body? Exactly. Let's quickly recap the process in short. This master endocrine gland secretes hormones that will go and target the various other glands in the body. In this case, we are referring to the testes and the ovaries in males and females respectively. On the contrary, these gonads will secrete hormones like the testosterone in males and the estrogen in females. And what will testosterone targets the various sites in a male body to help in the development of secondary sexual characters in him. Similarly, the development of various secondary sexual characters in a female are the responsibilities of the estrogen. This is how the onset of puberty brings various changes in the individual. However, we know that in a human body there are several other hormones besides the sex hormones, and they play extremely vital functions. Do you want to know about them? You watch our next video to know more.
So from this video, we have specifically got to know about the mechanism of action of the sex hormones particularly. So the sex hormones, they are secreted from the endocrine glands, about which we have already learned in the chapter endocrine system. Now, the endocrine glands are those glands who directly pour their secretions, that means the hormones, into the bloodstream. And we know blood reaches each and every cell of our body, so they also reach the target site through blood. Now, after reaching the target site, they have got the target cell. If we study in this manner, suppose this is the target cell TC, and the blood vessel is actually, this is a blood vessel. Okay, BV represents a blood vessel. Now hormones are being carried. So these are the hormone particles. Now you might ask me that blood reaches each and every cell of the body. So how hormones get to know with which cell to bind with, or which is the target cell? So the answer is the presence of the receptor. The target cell is that cell which will bear the receptor to that particular hormone particle. So this hormone particle will come and bind with this receptor. This is the receptor, and then the chain of action will start or be unlocked, so that necessary action is taken subsequently. So blood is carrying these hormone particles to each and every cell, but only it will bind to that cell which bears the receptor. So we can say that estrogen secreted in females by the ovaries is carried by blood to the pubic region, underarm region, breast region, and then there we can see the development of secondary sexual characters. Similarly, testosterone secreted in males by the testes that is also carried by blood to the chest region, underarm region, pubic region, facial region, and then bring about the secondary sexual character development. So this is how the process works. Now the endocrine glands, the same thing that you have watched in the video is written over here. So they are the ductless glands which release hormones into the bloodstream, and then they travel to specific parts called the target sites. And the target site respond to the hormones released by the gland after the hormone particles bind with the receptors. Testes and ovaries secrete sex hormones responsible for male and female secondary sexual characteristics. Now, here it is told at the age 45 to 50 years, the menstrual cycle in case of female stops, and the last menstrual cycle is termed as menopause. Right? If you remember, the first in the chapter of endocrine system, I have taught that the first menarche, or rather here also in this chapter I have taught that the first menstrual cycle is termed as menarche, and on the other hand the last menstrual cycle, which usually takes place between this age group in females, is termed as menopause. This also happens due to the role of hormones only, and also due to the exhaustion of the number of follicles in the ovaries. So now we will see a simulation regarding action of hormones in glands. Let's see. So see, the same thing which I have explained is described over here in the pictorial form, that this is the blood vessel, the cells of the endocrine gland, they are releasing the hormone particles directly into the bloodstream, and they are being carried to the target cell which has got receptor with which they will be bound. And once they are bound, so then the necessary action will start to unlock, and then every change will start to take place. So you can see over here, this is a beautiful pictorial representation of the mechanism of work, how the hormones bring about the change in our body. Our next topic in this chapter is about reproductive phase. What is reproductive phase? Now, from the term only, you can understand, you can have a basic idea that reproductive phase means the age range throughout which that individual will remain reproductively active, or in other words, that individual will be able to produce gametes capable of fertilization, both in case of male as well as in case of female. So if I talk about female, what should be the reproductive phase? Yes, the reproductive phase in case of female will be from menarche to menopause, right? Because this is the time period during which the female body will produce one viable egg in each menstrual cycle each month, and that egg will be capable of fusing with a sperm and then giving rise to a zygote, which is the future fetus. So therefore, this is the time period during which the female body is reproductively active, from menarche during adolescent stage to menopause during the age of 45 to 50 years. Now what about males? So for males, it is actually taken from the adolescent stage, obviously during the from the onset of puberty, when they start producing viable sperms, and then it goes on, some say until the lifetime, but some say up to 70 to 80 years of age, till their sperms are viable or capable of fertilizing the egg. So you can see the reproductive phase in case of males is much longer as compared to that in case of females. So the in case of females, it is limited because of the limited number of follicles in each of the ovaries. So once the stock of follicle is over, so reproductive phase is also over. But that is not the case in case of males. They can produce new sperms and there is no stock. So they are producing and they are releasing during ejaculation, and it keeps on going until and unless they lose the viability or they lose the capacity to produce any further active sperms, if I say. So reproductive phase is the phase during which both male and females are capable of reproducing. So that is the basic idea. Now let's watch this video to know more about this concept.
By now, we are aware of almost all the changes that occur during puberty in both boys and girls. So, can you tell me which is the most important of all changes? Yes, it is the development of reproductive organs. The stage of sexual maturity is what defines puberty in true sense. And what do we mean by this? This means that the individual is now physically capable of reproduction. So, are we saying that both males and females are capable of reproduction with the onset of puberty? Absolutely. And that would mean that they can reproduce anytime throughout their life, right? Absolutely not. Why not? The basic reason for this is that the case of males and females is different when it comes to the reproductive span. And why is this different? This is what we need to answer in this video that deals with the concept of reproductive phase. Now, what exactly do we mean by this? Let us understand the two words. Reproductive here means the process of reproduction, and phase means the time period. So, are we saying that individuals are capable of reproduction only for some period of time? Yes, and this is applicable only in the case of females. But why so? Let me explain. In case of males, development of testes causes production of gametes, that is sperms. And this process, once started, does not terminate throughout the male's life. Only the sperms produced can decrease in count with age. However, the ability to reproduce still remains the same. But the case of females is completely different. Females cannot reproduce throughout their lives. This term, reproductive phase, holds true in their case. And why is it so? Well, the simplest answer to this question is the process of ovulation. That's right. Now, can you guess from the name what is ovulation? It is the process of release of ova from the ovaries. Now, you may wonder how the process can be an answer to this question. It's simple. We know that reproduction requires an egg cell as the female gamete. And if ovulation is the release of egg cells, then that means reproduction will be possible only when egg cells are released. But did you know that in every individual female, the number of egg follicles in the ovaries is fixed? That means the ovaries will have fixed number of immature egg cells stored inside them since the beginning. However, only on the onset of puberty, the egg cells are released one after the other. So don't you think the capacity of reproduction will begin when the first egg cell will be released by the ovary? Yes, and it will obviously stop when the number of egg cells will come to an end. This phase is nothing but the reproductive phase in females. The beginning and the end of this important phase are given scientific names. The commencing point is called as menarche. So can we say a girl experiences menarche when she steps into puberty? Yes, and the occurrence differs from one female to the other. However, the average age range to expect menarche is around 12 to 14 years. Also, the time when it terminates is called menopause. This time is also different in females, but the average period of age is between 45 to 50 years. Let us just imagine that one of the ovaries has released an egg cell. It goes straight to the fallopian tube and then moves further. Now, if this egg gets fertilized, then the fetus will need a proper location for placental attachment, right? For this, a proper thick cushion layer made up of cells needs to be formed inside the uterus. We know that this layer is called the endometrium. But how will the reproductive tract know whether fertilization is going to occur or not? How will it form the endometrium all of a sudden if fertilization occurs? The natural tendency of our body is to be prepared for every possibility. So in this case too, our body makes the necessary preparations. When the ovum is released from either of the ovaries, many hormones work in coordination to get the endometrial layer ready. In case fertilization occurs, the fetus will have a proper location for placental attachment. Wait a second. We said if fertilization occurs. What if it doesn't? In that case, the ovum will come out of the body through the vagina. And what will happen to the endometrium? Astonishingly, the layer also collapses and gets out of the body through the vagina. As a result of this, for almost 4 to 5 days every month, a female experiences a bleeding phase. The bleeding is through the vagina and it contains the unfertilized ovum, the cells of endometrium, and the blood, of course. This is called as the menstrual fluid, and the process is referred to as menstruation. Did you notice I mentioned that the bleeding phase is for 4 to 5 days every month? Why did I say every month? That is because the entire process occurs in a cyclic manner that lasts for 28 to 30 days. The ovulation and building up of the endometrium, and then followed by this to the collapsing of endometrium in case fertilization does not occur. This will give rise to the discharge of the menstrual fluid through the vagina. Don't you think this entire cycle will also have a scientific name? Of course, it's called the menstrual cycle. So the menstrual cycle is almost a 28 to 30 day cycle, out of which the bleeding phase lasts for 4 to 5 days. In a nutshell, the reproductive ability is obtained by individuals with the onset of puberty. In males, it lasts till they're alive. However, in females, the reproductive phase is marked by the menarche and concluded by the menopause. The time period in between is where the body undergoes the menstrual cycle. The reproductive capacity of females is only found during this phase. So we have talked about the process that happens when fertilization does not take place. But what if fertilization occurs? Do we know whether it will be a boy or a girl? Let us learn about the concept of sex determination in the next video.
Okay, so this video was a long one, and from this video, we have got to know about the concept of menstrual cycle. So since they have already discussed about it, let's recapitulate a bit before moving forward. So, reproductive phase, as I said before moving into watching the video, that is the time period during which an individual is reproductively active or capable of reproducing or capable of producing gametes, or rather viable gametes, which can undergo fertilization process. So as you have watched in the video, for males, there it continues from puberty till the lifetime, but the sperm count decreases to a very low number during the old age, which is almost negligible. So that is why I said 70 to 80 years. And for females, it is obviously up to the stock of the follicle lasts. Now, talking about the menstrual cycle. So, this cycle is a repetitive cycle which keeps on actually repeating itself every month along with a series of events taking place in between, right from the bleeding to again the next bleeding phase. So, they have already told about this cycle, which is a 28 to 30-day cycle. Now, among these 28 to 30 days, 4 to 5 days, they are the bleeding days you can take. Right? Now, if we subtract it, so we have got almost 23 to 25 days. This is the period in between two consecutive menstrual cycle. So this is the period between two, we can say, two consecutive menstruation days. So during this time period, the uterus actually prepares itself for the next stage or the next phase. That is where if the next set or in the next one fertilization takes place. So many changes take place, which are number one, obviously development of endometrium. Now this endometrium lining is developed due to the secretion of estrogen from the ovaries, and they actually signal the uterus to start preparing the cushion like layer in case fertilization takes place. Now, next thing which is very important and also talked about in the video is ovulation. What is ovulation? Release of ovum or egg from either of the ovaries. Now this release is brought about by again two hormones, that is follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Both of them are secreted from the pituitary gland, and they stimulate the ovaries to release ovum each month. These are the two main changes that take place during this time period, so that after this ovulation, this egg or the ovum, it remains viable for around 24 hours to 48 hours, and then the next bleeding days or the bleeding phase starts. So, and then this the cell in the ovaries from which egg was released, actually that is known as Graafian follicle. Graafian follicle. So this is the cell from which ovulation takes place. So now from this cell will start to degenerate and then will form corpus luteum, which will now release the hormone progesterone. And this hormone progesterone, so it will release progesterone, and this will actually trigger the breakdown of the endometrium or the endometrial lining. So therefore, until and unless progesterone is released and it signals the endometrium that no fertilization has taken place, so now you can remove yourself. So till then endometrium lining persists. So you can say that it was asked in the video that how does the endometrium come to know whether fertilization has taken place or not. It is absolutely the role of hormones that actually instructs the build-up as well as the breakdown of the endometrium lining. When there is release of the estrogen hormone and there is a release of ovum, that is ovulation, so it triggers the buildup of endometrium as well, so as to prepare the uterus in case any fertilization takes place. Similarly, when no fertilization takes place, then progesterone release from corpus luteum triggers the breakdown of this lining, and in the menstrual bleeding phase, that is during this 4 to 5 days, you have already watched the composition of menstrual bleeding: an unfertilized egg, then blood and mucus or the endometrial cells, they all actually are shed together. And that is why menstrual bleeding is actually not the impure form of blood or anything that is actually believed according to the superstition, but it is a natural process of the body to get rid of this lining which is no further required, but that again gets built up every month. And it is actually the sign that the female body is fertile, or this is the sign of the reproductive phase in female. Once this reproductive phase is over, then no further menstrual bleeding will take place. There will be no ovulation and hence no buildup of endometrium, and so no shedding of the menstrual bleeding. So everything comes to a dead end. So when there is any issue with menstrual bleeding, either there is any disease or there is any obstruction, so you must immediately consult an expert, that means a gynecologist, who can help you out to sort out your problem. So it's not that it's impure blood or the female body has become impure during these days, but obviously you must take rest because the body is going through a change, it is bleeding, and that is why you must take diet rich in proteins to recover or to compensate for the blood loss from your body and to regain the strength that you have lost through this bleeding. So it's completely natural, normal process, and you must not freak out during these days. You just need to take rest and you just need to let your body take over the course of events. So menstrual cycle is controlled by hormones that I have already explained now. It includes the maturation of the egg, then release, and then thickening of the uterine wall, that is endometrium, and breakdown if fertilization or pregnancy does not occur. And if it occurs, then obviously endometrial wall actually helps to implant the zygote, and then for it also helps in the formation of the placenta. So that one is a completely different topic that we will discuss later. And pituitary gland helps in the secretion of the sex hormones. As I told, it helps to secrete FSH and LH, which helps in the development as well as in the release of ovum from either of the ovaries. So hormones from pituitary stimulate the testes and ovaries to release testosterone in case of males and estrogen in case of females. And then these are released directly in the bloodstream and reach the target site, means the testis and the ovaries, and they stimulate the changes to start the puberty changes. So this is the reproductive phase in the human life. That means from puberty, which starts in both male and female, and then it is varying in both the sexes. So the uterus will shed its lining through vagina if fertilization does not occur. And menarche is the first stage, and menopause is the last stage of menstrual, or the last menstrual cycle, with which the last follicle of the ovary is shed off, and the cycle or the reproductive phase in case of females also comes to an end. So this is the phase. You can see the phases are named in this manner. Menstrual phase means the phase of bleeding for 4 to 5 days. Then this is the follicular phase, during which one of the many follicles that are stocked in either of the ovaries, it starts to grow rapidly to be shed in the next month, or to be released from one of the ovaries in the next month. So development of the primary follicle is known as the follicular phase. Then ovulation phase is there, in which the ovum is released from either of the ovaries. The ovum which has gone rapid development and become mature enough to be released. So that is the ovulation phase. And as I told, when ovulation is done, then the follicle is again converted into Graafian follicle, and then from that corpus luteum is formed. So that phase, that is formation of corpus luteum, is known as the luteal phase, and this corpus luteum leads to the secretion of progesterone, which triggers the menstrual phase, that means shedding of the endometrial lining. So these are the 4 main phases of menstrual cycle, that is starting with the menstrual phase, follicular phase, ovulation phase, and luteal phase. And it keeps on repeating themselves again and again in each month till the menopause. So, and here you can see that the diagram which shows the changes in the structure of the ovary, then the level of the hormones, and then the lining of the endometrium, and the days of the month in which it occurs. So therefore, recruited follicle means the follicle which is going to mature and be released as ovum in a particular month. So this is the recruited ovum. It has started to develop quickly, maturing, and then there is ovulation or release from the ovary, and then after release you can see it has formed corpus luteum, and then the corpus luteum will degenerate to release the hormone progesterone. Now, during ovulation phase, it is told that the basal body temperature of the female rises a bit. So you can or you cannot actually sense that, but it is told that the basal body temperature during that release of ovum is raised. So here you can see the rise of body temperature during slight rise during ovulation. And talking about the hormones, the estrogen, during ovulation, so there is LH surge. The LH hormone, you can see here, suddenly rises. There is spike. So it is known as LH surge, means sudden spike in luteinizing hormone which leads to ovulation, and then the follicle stimulating hormone again leads to the development of the other follicles after the ovulation is over, and the progesterone hormone is also at its peak in the luteal phase, which leads to the shedding of the endometrial lining. Here you can see that during the first days, or so you can see 1 2 3 to 5, so it is decreasing, the endometrial lining is decreasing because there is shedding in the form of the blood and mucus and the unfertilized egg, and then again the endometrial lining is thickening to prepare itself as a cushion in order to protect the fertilized egg if there is any pregnancy occurring. So now this is the next topic, the sex determination. So that we will deal in the last part of the lecture in the next video, because we have learned so much in this video. So you can go through this and let us know if there is any issue in any of the topics. So in the next lecture we will know about sex determination, then how is the sex of the baby is determined, then other hormones apart from sex hormones, and also we'll know about reproductive health, the concept as well as the habits which can help us to maintain a good reproductive health. So we'll discuss all these topics and then we'll wrap up the chapter in the last lecture. So for today, I am signing off from this lecture. Hope I could give you a good insight of the topics that have been discussed today. Thank you so much for joining with us, and take care and bye-bye.